Imagine discovering your quiet neighborhood is controlled by fake HOA officers who will stop at nothing to enforce their rules, even breaking your wife's arm. When my biker cousins hear about this, they unleash an all-out war that turns our peaceful suburb into a battleground. This is a story of deception, betrayal, and revenge you won't believe. If you love jaw-dropping HOA drama and Karen chaos, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss part 2 of this wild 4-part saga. Let's dive into the madness. The quiet suburb of Willow Creek was the kind of place where every lawn was manicured, every mailbox matched, and every neighbor waved with a practiced smile. For Tom and his wife Lisa, it was the perfect place to start their new life. They'd moved into their modest 2-story home 6 months ago, drawn by the promise of a peaceful community. The neighborhood's homeowners association, or HOA, seemed strict but fair, with rules about grass height, fence colors, and holiday decorations. Tom and Lisa didn't mind. They wanted to fit in. But beneath the surface of this idyllic community, something sinister was brewing, something that would shatter their lives and ignite a war they never saw coming. It all began with a letter, slipped into their mailbox on a crisp autumn morning. The letter, printed on official-looking HOA letterhead, demanded they remove the small birdhouse Lisa had hung in their front yard tree. The reason? It wasn't an approved design. Lisa loved that birdhouse, a handmade gift from her late father, and she wasn't about to take it down. Tom agreed, thinking the rule was petty. They ignored the letter, assuming it was a minor misunderstanding. Days later, a second letter arrived, this time with a fine of $200 for non-compliance. The tone was sharp, almost threatening, warning of further action if they didn't obey. Tom, a practical man who worked long hours as a mechanic, decided to visit the HOA office to sort things out. The office was just a converted garage in a neighbor's home, which struck him as odd, but he brushed it off. Inside, he met Karen, the self-proclaimed HOA president. She was a wiry woman with a pinched face and an air of authority that seemed to radiate from her pristine clipboard. Karen barely looked up from her paperwork as she informed Tom that the birdhouse violated Section 3.2 of the HOA bylaws. When he asked to see the bylaws, she waved him off, saying they were confidential. Tom's gut told him something was wrong, but he didn't push. He promised Lisa he'd handle it, and they reluctantly took the birdhouse down to avoid more fines. But the demands didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, the HOA bombarded them with notices. Their trash cans were visible from the street. Their car was parked an inch too close to the curb. Their porch light was the wrong wattage. Each violation came with a fine, and soon, Tom and Lisa were drowning in fees they couldn't afford. Lisa, a gentle soul who taught kindergarten, started losing sleep, her anxiety spiking with every new letter. Tom tried to confront Karen again, but the office was always locked and no one answered the HOA's listed phone number. Rumors swirled among the neighbors, whispers that Karen and her inner circle, a group of 4 other residents who called themselves the HOA board, were running the show with an iron fist. Some said they'd seen Karen's husband, Greg, a hulking man with a temper, patrolling the neighborhood at night, taking photos of violations. Others claimed the HOA wasn't even registered with the state, but no one dared challenge them. The breaking point came on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Lisa was in the front yard planting tulip bulbs when Greg stormed over, red-faced and bellowing about her unauthorized gardening. Lisa, startled, tried to explain that she'd checked the rules and found no mention of flower beds. Greg didn't care. He grabbed her arm, yanking her to her feet with such force that she screamed in pain. Tom, working in the garage, heard her cry and sprinted outside, only to find Lisa crumpled on the grass, clutching her arm. Greg was already stalking away, muttering about teaching her a lesson. At the hospital, the doctor confirmed Lisa's arm was fractured in 2 places. She'd need a cast and weeks of recovery, unable to teach or even lift her gardening tools. Tom's blood boiled, but Lisa begged him to let it go, terrified of what Greg and Karen might do next. Tom couldn't let it go. The image of his wife in pain, her dreams of a peaceful home shattered, fueled a rage he hadn't felt in years. He knew he needed help, and there was only one place he could turn. His cousins, a tight-knit group of bikers who lived a few towns over. They called themselves the Iron Reapers, a crew of rough-around-the-edges men and women who lived by their own code. Tom hadn't seen them in years. Not since he'd left that life behind for Lisa, but he knew they'd come through. He made the call that night, his voice shaking as he explained what happened. His cousin Jake, the Reapers' leader, listened in silence before saying, "We're on our way." The next morning, the roar of motorcycles echoed through Willow Creek, turning heads and rattling windows. 8 bikes rolled into Tom's driveway, their chrome gleaming in the sun. Jake, a bear of a man with a graying beard and a leather vest covered in patches, hugged Tom tightly. The other Reapers, men and women with names like Spike, Raven, and Tank, scanned the neighborhood with hard eyes, already sizing up the situation. Tom explained everything. The fake HOA, the endless fines, Greg's assault on Lisa. Jake's jaw tightened and he promised they'd get to the bottom of it. The Reapers didn't waste time. They started by digging into the HOA's legitimacy, using contacts from their network to check public records. What they found confirmed Tom's suspicions. There was no registered HOA for Willow Creek. Karen and her crew were operating a scam, extorting money from residents under the guise of authority. The fines were deposited into a private account linked to Karen's name, and Greg's patrols were just a way to intimidate anyone who questioned them. The Reapers decided to send a message, but they had to be smart. Karen and Greg had the neighborhood in a chokehold, and any misstep could escalate things dangerously. They began with subtle moves like leaving anonymous notes in mailboxes, warning neighbors about the fake HOA. They parked their bikes in strategic spots, their presence alone enough to make Greg and his cronies nervous. But the real plan was brewing, and it would shake Willow Creek to its core. As the sun set on the first day of the Reapers' arrival, Tom felt a mix of hope and dread. He knew his cousins were loyal, but their methods could be ruthless. Lisa, her arm in a sling, watched the bikers from the window, her face pale. The neighborhood was about to become a battlefield, and there was no turning back. The Reapers' presence in Willow Creek sent ripples of unease through the neighborhood. Karen and her fake HOA board doubled down, issuing new fines and sending threatening letters to anyone seen talking to the bikers. But the Reapers were undeterred. Jake, with his years of experience navigating conflicts, devised a plan to expose the scam without bloodshed, though he made it clear that if push came to shove, they were ready for a fight. The first step was gathering evidence. Raven, a tech-savvy Reaper with a knack for hacking, tapped into Karen's email account, uncovering a treasure trove of messages between her and Greg. The emails detailed their scheme. They'd moved into Willow Creek a year ago, posing as HOA officials after discovering the neighborhood had no formal association. They'd forged documents, set up a fake office, and started collecting fines, pocketing thousands from terrified residents. The emails also revealed their paranoia. Karen was obsessed with maintaining control, while Greg bragged about scaring the sheep into compliance. Raven printed the emails and made copies, ready to distribute them to every household. Meanwhile, Spike and Tank took a more direct approach. They followed Greg on his nightly patrols, tailing him in their bikes just close enough to make him sweat. Greg's bravado faded as he realized he was being watched. One night he confronted Spike in a dark cul-de-sac, brandishing a flashlight like a weapon. Spike, lean and wiry with a scar across his cheek, just laughed, his eyes glinting with menace. Greg backed off, but the encounter left him rattled. The Reapers also reached out to the neighbors, slipping notes under doors with proof of the HOA's fraud. Some residents were skeptical, too afraid to act, but others began to whisper about fighting back. Tom, caught between his loyalty to his cousins and his fear for Lisa's safety, struggled to keep up. Lisa's arm was healing, but her spirit was bruised. She spent hours staring at her garden, unable to tend to it, haunted by the memory of Greg's attack. Tom tried to reassure her, but the tension in their home was palpable. The Reapers' plan reached its next phase at a neighborhood meeting Karen called to address the biker problem. The meeting was held in the community center, a small building packed with nervous residents. Karen stood at the front, her clipboard clutched like a shield, ranting about the criminal element invading their streets. The Reapers didn't attend, but they'd prepared their move. As Karen spoke, Raven hacked the community center's projector, displaying the incriminating emails for all to see. Gasps filled the room as neighbors read the truth. Karen and Greg were con artists bleeding the community dry. Karen's face drained of color and she fled the room, Greg close behind. The meeting dissolved into chaos with residents shouting questions and demands. The Reapers had struck a blow, but the war was far from over. Karen and Greg weren't the type to go down quietly. They retaliated by doubling fines and sending cease and desist letters to anyone who'd received Raven's notes. Greg was spotted slashing tires on a neighbor's car, a warning to anyone who sided with the Reapers. Jake knew they needed to escalate, but carefully. The Reapers began patrolling openly, their bikes rumbling through the streets at all hours, a constant reminder of their presence. They also started helping neighbors, fixing fences, mowing lawns, anything to win trust and build a coalition. Tom watched as his quiet suburb transformed into a powder keg. Some neighbors rallied behind the Reapers, sharing their own stories of HOA harassment. Others sided with Karen, too scared or loyal to break free. Lisa, still shaken, begged Tom to pull back, but he couldn't. The Reapers were family and they were fighting for her. One night, as Tom and Jake sat on the porch planning their next move, a brick crashed through their living room window, shattering glass across the floor. A note tied to it read, "Leave or regret it." Jake's eyes darkened and he muttered, "They just made this personal." The Reapers were done playing nice, and the next phase of their revenge would change Willow Creek forever. If this story of fake HOA tyrants and biker vengeance has you hooked, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for parts 3 and 4. Share your own HOA horror stories in the comments. We'd love to hear them. Stay tuned for the next chapter of this wild ride.